coming to you live from the wastelands of the internet. We have news of the week. Let's get started right away, shall we? This story is what I call why we should pull out of NATO. This is why we have no business protecting any of those SOBs in the European Union, really. What am I referring to? Vladimir Putin can exploit this NATO loophole to attack the United States and still not trigger Article 5. Experts have warned that Vladimir Putin could use a NATO loophole to attack the US and still not trigger Article 5. On Sunday, December 7th, 1941, the course of World War II changed forever when Japan launched a surprise attack on the American naval base at Pearl Harbor in Honolulu, Hawaii. Consequently, it led to then President Franklin Delano Roosevelt to join the Allies and declare war on the Axis. Inaccurate assessment. All right. A move that would eventually lead to the use of nuclear weapons to force Japan to surrender. That part's accurate. All right. Why did I say that was inaccurate? Because, to be honest, it led us to declare war on Japan. It did not lead us to declare war on Germany. It was Germany's declaration and Italy's declaration of war on the United States that subsequently allowed us to declare war, or allowed Delano Roosevelt, rather, to declare war on Germany and Italy. However, experts warn that if Vladimir Putin did the same thing today, the members of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization would not be obligated to rise to the Aloha State's defense. David Sataro, president of the Pacific Forum think tank in Honolulu, said, "It's the weirdest thing. People tend to assume that Hawaii is part of the U.S. and therefore it's covered by NATO." All right. The argument for not including Hawaii is simply that it's not part of North America. The clue is in the alliance's name, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Hawaii, of course, is in the Pacific. And unlike California, Colorado, or Alaska, the 50th state is not part of the continental United States that reaches the North Atlantic Ocean on its eastern shores. And while Article 5 of the treaty provides for a collection of self-defense in the event of a military attack on any member state, which the United States is, Article 6 limits the geographic scope of that. It reads that armed attack on one or more of the parties is deemed to include an armed attack on the territory of any of the parties in Europe or North America. Okay? That's pretty clear. An armed attack on one or more of the parties is deemed to include, okay, an armed attack on the territory of any of the partners in Europe or North America. The United States is a partner in North America. However, such attack would likely trigger Article 4. All right. Why am I bringing this up? The reason I'm bringing this up is these people are trying to find ways to get us involved into a war with Russia and exclude the European Union, which is where the fight really is, which is what the fight is about. You can't trust these guys. You can't trust them. When you have a think tank going, well, an attack on Hawaii really isn't an attack on, it's an attack on America, but America, it does, that doesn't mean that we're part of the partners in North America. I mean, it kind of does, but it doesn't really. And it wouldn't obligate these guys to actually go to war with us. Why? Do you don't think that it's a good idea to have allies in a war? An attack on Hawaii is not an attack on the United States as a whole. It's just kind of fallacious thinking. It's just this kind of um diplomatic speaking, so to say, right? Which has caused a lot of the conflicts around the world and where people are freaking screwed up. That's why you get freaking stupid articles like this from the Jerusalem Post. Surprise, surprise, surprise! Hamas has thousands more fighters than Israel initially thought. Analysis. At least 26,000 Hamas members have been put out of action by Israel to date, when adding together killed, wounded, and arrested totals. 30,000 was always an estimate for how many fighters Hamas had. What do you mean it was always an estimate? Who had that estimate? I'm serious. Who made this estimate? Who was it that was doing this estimate? You have millions of Palestinians in Gaza alone, 70% of which are full-throated supporters of Hamas. That's 70% are Hamas fighters. Just my math. 70% of the millions. All right? You have millions of fighters for Hamas. What are you talking about? 30,000 was always the estimate for how many fighters Hamas had. We now know the number was too low. Following numbers provided by the Israeli defense sources, Israel has killed around 13,000 members of Hamas. Already back in early February, the IDF had wounded another 10,000 to such a degree that it was assessed that they would not be able to return to the battle, and had arrested another 2,300. Really? They had wounded them to the degree that they couldn't return to battle. Where'd that number come from? How are you doing that assessment? Who made that assessment? I'm serious. Who made that assessment? The IDF has not provided updated wounded and arrest numbers since then, but simply adding together a series of public announcements regarding arrests, such as more than 500 Hamas terrorists arrested at the Shifa hospital, at least around 3,500 have been arrested to date. This means that at least around 26,000 Hamas members have been put out of action by Israel to date, when adding together killed, wounded, and arrested totals. Until Tuesday, Israeli defense sources said that there were 4 Hamas battalions in Rafah and 2 left in central Gaza, leaving around 6,000 Hamas forces. Adding 26,000 and 6,000 would have broken the 30,000 total, but could be considered close enough to be generally accurate. However, on Tuesday, Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer said that Hamas has 8,000 of its forces in Rafah. Adding an additional 4,000 to the 32,000 brings us up to 36,000. But that's not the end of it. Recently, IDF sources, all right, gave a briefing indicating that around 70% of Hamas forces in Khan Yunis, out of the original 4,500, have been removed from the battlefield. All right, that would at least leave at least 1,300 additional forces in Khan Yunis. Similarly, there have been reports that Hamas still has at least a few thousand forces left in northern Gaza. Adding all these numbers up comes closer to pre-war Hamas force of over 40,000, or or more, and the idea that it still has around 15,000 more or more remaining forces. None of this takes credit away for Israel for being succeeding to take apart 18 of Hamas's 24 battalions, and from having succeeded at removing, even with these new numbers, more than 60% of Hamas forces from the battlefield, is an impressive feat. No, it's not really all that impressive, except for the fact. Good morning, James. All right. Um, it's not that impressive when you think of the fact that the Hamas that they're fighting, okay, is all of the Gazans. When you have over 70% of the support from these people, okay, you're at war with all of Gaza. This thing of saying, oh, it's just Hamas, it's just Hamas. It isn't just Hamas. And sooner or later, somebody's going to have to come to the conclusion of that. It isn't just this group or that group or this or whatever. You're fighting an entire. You're fighting an entire country. You're fighting an entire demographic. And here's why. Here's a wild theory for you. What's your theory there, James? But here's why. Biggest teacher union to blame Israel for the war in Gaza. Britain's biggest teachers union is to blame Israel for the war in Gaza and publish educational resources about the conflict for teachers. Leaders of the National Education Union, the NEU, are calling on their 300,000 members to actively campaign for Palestine and increase understanding of the conflict. The union's executive board has backed a motion to be discussed at the annual conference next week, which declares Israel's hard-right racist government is the main driver of conflict, violence, and war in Palestine and Israel. Is it? It's not the Palestinians. It's not the fact that 70% of the Palestinians think that murder and butchery is perfectly fine as long as it's Israelis they were killing. That they are allowed by right to kill, maim, and destroy people who don't think like them. That's your attitude. That's your philosophy. That's the philosophy of these people. That's the philosophy, all right, of a supposed educational group that has absolutely done nothing to change that view. What has the NEU done to change the view of the Palestinians not to kill women and children and so forth? Muslims and Jews are fighting now while Trump is out of office because Biden won't enforce Abrahamic law courts. It wouldn't matter. Okay, I'm going to be real blunt. The problem is a 12th century mentality with modern weaponry. That's the reality. Could we end the Houthi threat? I'm going to be real blunt. I'm going to be real blunt. Could we end the United States? Could the United States end the Houthi threat to shipping, all right, in the Gulf, in the Red Sea, around Yemen? Could the United States, by itself, end that threat? Could we end it? Ask yourself that question. Could we end it? And the answer is yes. We could. Could we end the threat of Iran? Yeah, we could. Why don't we? Because we care about human life. But eventually, you're going to come to the conclusion. Eventually, you're going to have to come to the realization, okay, that in order to defend human life, you've got to sit up there and use extraordinarily brutal means. Because the problem isn't this group or that group. The problem is the attitude of the population. Could we end the Palestinian problem in Gaza? Almost overnight. Within 2 weeks, we could end the problem completely. How? We have hundreds and hundreds of B-52s. We could just sit there and bomb them day in, day out with B-52s, just arc-like type of bombing, right? Carpet bombing area after area after area until there's no one left. Or until they come out and go, okay, we get it, we surrender. That's all you need. It's not fun. And I can hear the people crying now. Genocide! Genocide! You can't do that. Why? These people aren't going to change any other way. I know it's horrific. I know it sounds horrible. And it is. Do you have a better solution? Do you have another solution? Do you have another solution that's going to prevent the terrorists in Hamas from freaking doing what they did in Israel? Without that. Let me know what it is. Because it isn't trying to negotiate a peace. They've been negotiating a peace for quite a while. It isn't letting them have their own determination because they had that. To say it will intervene in the genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice in a reflection of the country's long-standing position of solidarity with the Palestinian cause. Ireland announced this week that it would file its intervention, adding to growing international pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu's government to dial back its devastating assault on Gaza and end the severe restrictions on food aid, pushing Palestinians toward famine. In a speech on Wednesday, Irish Foreign Minister Michelle Michael said that both the Hamas October 7th attack in Israel and Israel war in Gaza represent blatant violations of international law on a mass scale. And yet, what did you fucktards do, to prevent the Hamas from doing it? Oh, you gave them weapons, you gave them supplies, you gave them everything they needed, to commit the attack, and yet now you can, there's a great violation. Go F yourselves. We know what side you're on. According to the reports, Ireland is expected to include in its intervention the argument that Israel's blocking of food aid to Gaza is to be considered an act of genocide. Ireland's position on the Israeli-Hamas conflict has made it an outlier among European governments. Zoe Lawlor, who leads the Irish Palestinian Solidarity Committee, said there was deep empathy and sympathy in Ireland for the Palestinian people. That solidarity is largely born out of a shared experience of subjugation by an occupying state. The island nation was under English and British rule for more than 800 years after Anglo-Norman invaders seized huge stretches of land, all right, huge tracts of land, all right, from the native Irish in the 12th century. Ireland was Britain's oldest colony, said Jane Erlmeyer, a historian professor or history professor at Trinity College in Dublin, pointing out that Ireland was like other Western states, many of which were themselves imperial powers. But like Palestine, Ireland had direct and sustained experience of imperialism. What the hell are you freaking talking about, bitch? Sustained experience of imperialism. Apparently, this supposed fucking history professor, Parmalee, didn't read history. I don't know about anybody else. But there's something called historical facts. And I know that's hard for this bitch to understand. This is what they call a history professor, Jane Oldmeyer. Really, Jane? Sustained imperialism. Sustained imperialism. I'm going to keep coming back to that. Sustained imperialism. Hey, Bobby. When did the quote unquote Palestinians come under British rule? Just a question. When did they come under British rule? Do you know? Jane? Oh, that's right. There was this thing called World War One. So from World War One to World War Two, the British occupied that area. After World War Two, the UN took over that area. And after the UN took over that area, they sit up there and said, okay, we're going to create a Palestinian enclave, an Israeli enclave. And then what happened? Then the other Arab nations around that area all attacked, one after another. Egypt attacked, the Jordanians attacked, the Syrians attacked. Okay? These supposed Palestinians suffering under imperialism did it for less than 30 years. And then they supported attacks by all the Arabs against the Israelis and lost. Lost. They encountered a group of people, right, who had suffered tremendously during World War II, who knew what suffering was, swore never to let it happen again, and were just as vicious, but far more cohesive than the Palestinians were. Hey, Bobby B. The problem with the Uniparty is it refuses to have friends or enemies until the two-way rivalry happens. Shared colonial experience, huh? No, what you have is the leadership of Ireland making stupid freaking comments. I would venture to say that most of the Irish don't give a rat's ass about the Palestinians and do not sit up there and support the Palestinian cause. Oh, their government does. And their government is right now trying to pivot after a disastrous vote where they attempted to say LGBTQ rights need to be installed in our government. We need to put it in our constitution where LGBT families are looked upon as everything else. And the population rose up in mass when they tried to change the constitution and told them, "Go F yourselves." It doesn't take much for people to understand the difference between what Israel is doing and what Hamas did. And the problem is the left and these leftist idiots trying to play the game of equivalency. Oh, it's the same thing. It's not the same thing. It never was the same thing. It never will be the same thing. You get stories like this from the Daily Mail. How a hardworking NHS nurse and her glamorous entrepreneur daughter were jailed for funding ISIS. Horrified friends on suburban East London Street slam ridiculous sentences and said the pair were emotionally blackmailed into supporting the jihadists. Friends of an NHS nurse and her tech, all right, startup daughter have blasted their prison sentence after they were jailed for funding ISIS after they sent cash to buy food for a relative who joined the banned terror group. So, in other words, sending cash, all right. I'm just going to buy food with it. You're sending cash to a terrorist. Knowingly sending cash to a terrorist, and they're going, but it was for food. The pair were convicted of sending more than 1,800 pounds to Yosef Ogba, all right, who ran away to join ISIS in 2014. Ogba was Olelia's brother and Antim's uncle. Their home is on the site of a former chapel in Clastow Maternity Hospital, which was responsible for the birth of generations of East Londoners from West Ham and Newham between 1889 and its eventual closure, all right, in 1777. Today, the mother and daughter are now in prison, expected to serve at least 18 months before being considered for release. On their quiet residential street, there is a sense of unease about what happened to the family. A family friend told Mail Online, "I can't believe that they've been jailed. Even the judge said they were not driven by ideology. All right, it is a case of emotional blackmail." Joseph kept messaging them saying that if they didn't send him money, he was going to starve. How about sending him a plane ticket to get the hell out of there? Joseph Ogda was raised Catholic and was even an altar boy in Finsbury Park in North London, but he converted to Islam while serving a prison sentence for aggravated burglary. Yeah, he was an altar boy. All right, in September of 2014, he left a note to his family saying he was going to Syria. They added they were not supporting terrorism, they were supporting a brother and an uncle. He would tell them, "Send me money or I'm going to die. I need to eat." All right. They were not supporting terrorism. We're just supporting the terrorist who's murdering and butchering people. And we're making sure that he can continue to murder and butcher people. Locals said terrorism is motivated by hate and division. The family are deeply religious and spiritual. The judge sentencing them to a lengthy jail term acknowledged they had not been influenced by the terrorist ideology. It doesn't matter what you did. We're doing. You knew better than to do it. You knew what you were doing. You knew what he was doing. If this guy was in London murdering people left and right, and came back and said, "Hey, I'm hiding in this cottage. Can you give me food and make sure that I can continue to kill more and more people? It'd be okay. That's all right. I'm gonna give you." He has every intention of continuing the cause and continuing the fight. Send him a plane ticket home would have been a better solution, don't you think? Speaking of mail online, the next door neighbor, Zohar Hamid, 40, all right, said what has happened to the family is it's unfair. She has known them for more than 20 years, and she said, "We were all so shocked when we heard what happened. We saw them grow up next door. They were such a kind and generous people. They were never in any trouble, except for the fact that the guy had been arrested and had served several prison terms. They were just nice people." He was an altar boy. Don't you understand? He was an altar boy. He was raised Catholic, converted to Islam, while serving a prison sentence for aggravated burglary. But they were a good family. No, they supported a terrorist. They supported the actions, all right, to continue the fight, to continue the brutalization of other people. There were a lot of Americans who gave money to the IRA. All right, ostensibly under the same programs. And the IRA were not, they may not have been the kind of terrorists that ISIS is, right? But they were bad. They were very bad. Go on to something different. Large crane on the East Coast arrives in Baltimore. The largest crane on the eastern seaboard arrived Friday in Baltimore as cleanup efforts get underway to clear the Patapsco, I cannot pronounce that, river, all right, wreckage after this week's Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed. The 1,000-ton crane arrived in the area Thursday night at around 11 p.m. local time. A survey is underway to assess damage before work crews can begin removal of the heavy and sharp pieces of concrete and metal, a U.S. Coast Guard official told USA Today. Officials said that 14 containers of the 56 that were transported on the 213 million pound ship, a Singapore based vessel named Dali, were impacted, which carried hazardous materials, but that there was no immediate environmental threat. The crew, 20 of whom are Indian nationals, are said to be in good shape, with only one with minor injuries, the Indian government said on Thursday. The waterway could be closed for over a month, an expert told CNN. The FBI Baltimore office, in a statement Friday, said airspace around the wreckage is a no drone zone after the FAA implemented a temporary flight restriction around the remains of the bridge within a 3-mile radius, as well as the 1,500 feet above the ground. The FBI warned drone operators that anyone caught flying a drone in the restricted area may be subject to fines or imprisonment. Drone operators need to know that we take seriously any incursion into restricted airspace around the Francis T. Scott Bridge collapse. Such incursions threaten the safety of those involved in the investigation of the bridge collapse and recovery of victims. We will investigate and prosecute anyone who violates the no drone zone, said the U.S. Attorney Eric Barron in a statement. Hey, dude, you've got other things to do. You have other fish to fry. It is far more important to find out what the hell happened on that ship than to worry about people flying drones over the friggin' bridge. This person should be tossed out of the government. The Biden administration approved Maryland's request for $6 million in emergency federal funding to rebuild the Francis Scott Key Bridge, which collapsed earlier this week after a cargo ship struck the structure. $60 million, huh? $60 million? They're going to rebuild that bridge for $60 million. Really? Want to think that there's something else going on? $60 million is all it's going to take to build that bridge. To rebuild it. $60 million. I would love for people to explain to me how you're going to rebuild this bridge for $60 million. Is it because you don't have to pay for any of the permits? You don't have to pay for any of the EPA freaking regulations that always crop up? You don't have to pay for all the other crap that's going on there. You just have to actually pay for the materials, the time and materials of the people doing it. Is that the reason it's only going to cost $60 million? Because I tell you what, if this project was going on today anywhere else, you're going to build a huge span of a mile, okay? Of a mile for $60 million. We couldn't even build a mile of track in Tucson for a frickin' rail car for under $1 billion. That's the insurance deductible, I guess. Yeah. No, this is going to be billions of dollars because they're going to waste it and everything else. NBC's Ronna McDaniel disaster is dragging Comcast into a political firestorm. The Comcast boss is watching an unceasing 5-alarm fire rage at 30 Rock, scarring the reputation of NBC News. How's it scarring the reputation and threatening to consume multiple parts of the Cesar Conde-run NBC Universal News Group? It's difficult to succinctly summarize the disastrous state of affairs at the news division, given that multiple engines are failing simultaneously. But one thing is clear. Conde has lost control of his organization, prompting industry insiders to wonder how he continues to remain in his role as chairman of the NBC News Group. In the words of one veteran media executive I spoke to on Wednesday, it is inconceivable. that he should. Instead of extinguishing the inferno that broke out on Friday with the hiring of former Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel, sparking an unprecedented on-air mutiny over her role in working to subvert the 2020 vote. The actions of Conde and NBC executives he has empowered, all right, have only hosed gasoline on it. While it's immediately obvious that the announcement was not going over well with the network staff, Conde froze still, digging in his heels in Miami sand and refusing to dump McDaniel after his top television personalities, including Chuck Todd and Rachel Madcow, all right, went on air and excoriated the hire. At that point, what he should have done, all right, is said, okay, you're going to sit up there and apologize, all right, or you're going to be out of a job. That's what he should have done. He should have walked on there and said, you guys are all fired. All right, now, who supported them in this? Anybody who supports them in this, you guys pick up your last paycheck too, because you're all gone as well. And let them go. We're standing up for integrity. We're standing up. You have no integrity, Chuck. Rachel Madcow has integrity? Are you flipping kidding me? Who believes that? If you got rid of that bint, okay, today, no one else would hire her. She would be out of a job. She wouldn't be on CNN. Okay? She wouldn't be on ABC. Now, the idiots at Fox News might try to hire her. That's the kind of stupidity that they would do. But then again, just hiring her, she would never go to Fox News. That's what she said about it. Chuck Todd's the same way. These people are damaged goods. If you want to reinvigorate your news staff, I would frickin' end their contracts immediately and let them go now. The eventual decision to cut McDaniels earned him public praise from the MSNBC host, but not before the 80-hour saga severely tarnished the reputation of Conde's top executives and touched off an all-out civil war inside the news group, which has sent the organization into a tailspin. Those details are starting to flood out of 30 Rock and into the public view. On Wednesday evening, Puck Daniels Byers offered an inside look into the chaos that has broken out, and it's quite an ugly sight to behold. Byers reported that Kerry Bruff Brown, NBC's News senior vice president of politics, had recruited Republican Richard Walters to advance conservative pushback on the social media against Todd. Brown denied that characterization, but Byers said that she had a conversation with Richard Walters and asked if McDaniels had supporters who could speak on her behalf during an NBC News contributor, right? But insisted that she'd never discussed what to say or how to say it or who to focus on. Regardless, staffers inside of NBC News are enraged at the fact that an executive would have engaged in such behavior. Fire them all. Hey, TC. Fire them all. These people damaged the organization, and they're continuing to damage the organization right now. Right? Rachel Madcow. All right, you can talk about her. And first of all, let's be perfectly frank. Why Rachel Maddow has any followers at all? When she came up, she was a decent looking woman who was easy on the eyes, and people sit up there and said, oh, good, we have another Bobby Batista. For those who don't know, I'm very afraid. Megyn Kelly. Remember Megyn Kelly? That kind of look. Decent looking woman. Everyone said, okay, well, she's a good looking woman. We'll put her on the air. She has a personality, and she does. And that's all we need, right? And we'll just let her go on, and slowly over years, right, she became more and more radically radical about her commentary, because that's all they are. They're actually activists, and she's an activist, and she holds her activism in a higher regard than she does news. And if NBC wanted to hire Ronna McDaniels, all right, they should have fired. They should have hired her. The reason they were scared is because Ronna McDaniels would have said, "Okay, I'm going to show everybody just how much of a lie, what kind of liars you people really are, because you've made statements that are actually quite easily false, that are factually false, and you've never received pushback on it." That's what they're terrified of. You can believe what you want about the elections, all right? But to say that the elections did not have any problems is frankly false. Now you can say, well, I don't think that evidence is conclusive, uh, and make the case. Be perfectly fine. But that's not what you said. You said there was no evidence. Oh, yes, there was. And there still is. The evidence still exists. What they were really terrified, though, is she was going to go after Biden. And they've been lying about Biden and the criminal activity he's been engaging in for frickin' his entire administration. They are liars, and they know it. And that's what they were really terrified of. They didn't give a shit about the election. They didn't give a frickin' flip about that. But that's all anybody's talking about, because it's shift the narrative away, hide the narrative away, because they were terrified that what she was going to bring out was what Biden actually has been doing, and they have freaking evidence of it, and they were going to force Rachel Madcow to actually answer those questions, and she didn't want to answer them. She didn't want to be shown to be the lying sack of shit that she was. Same thing with good old Chucky Boy Todd. That's why these cowards, all right, do what they did. They've got control of that organization, and they're gonna demand control of it. And the guy who's in charge of them is too weak to actually go up there. I've had enough of you. Bye. They could have fired her for cause. They could have fired Chuck Todd for cause. Well, I was just giving my opinion. You're supposed to be giving the news. Just putting it out there. Migrants to blame for border wall injuries, Americans say. Of course they are. About half of Americans believe that migrants are the most to blame if they are injured while trying to cross into the United States. However, 17% said the federal government bears most of the responsibility, while 13% blame governments in border states such as Texas and Arizona for migrants being injured. Just 7% said that the Mexican government was to blame, and 14% said that they didn't know. The poll surveyed 1,500 eligible U.S. voters between March 23rd and March 24th on behalf of Newsweek. All right? The people who sit up there and go, I don't know who's to blame, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. The number of migrants being injured while trying to climb over the wall that separates Mexico and the United States has risen significantly since the Trump administration began replacing sections of it that were less than 20 feet with 30-foot steel bollard barriers to deter illegal crossings. I thought that they didn't. How's that happening? How is that happening? If these things are not effective, how's that happening? Street View driver cops to felony for police chase. Google Street View driver, all right, who led police on a 120-mile-an-hour chase before crashing the car into an Indiana creek, all right, has pled guilty to a felony charge for trying to flee from law enforcement, according to court records. During a court hearing Monday, Coleman Ferguson, 37, copped to his reckless operation of a camera-equipped vehicle last year as part of a March 25th plea agreement. Ferguson agreed to a 1-year suspended jail sentence and a restitution of $3,220.97. Will also have to pay court and public defender fees. As part of the plea deal, the conviction of Ferguson, who is scheduled for sentencing on May 20th, will be entered as a lesser Class A misdemeanor. Ferguson, seen above, so he's not getting a felony charge. He's getting a misdemeanor charge. Right? Ferguson, seen above, appears to have been mapping areas outside Indianapolis in July of 31st when a cop spotted the Google vehicle around 5 p.m. hitting speeds reaching 120 miles an hour, according to a police report. All right. The auto had California plates, and cops reported several 360-degree cameras mounted on a tall antenna. The blue car driven by Ferguson was wrapped in vinyl skin carrying the Google and Street View logos and photos of Sydney, Australia Harbor. It also carried a written recommendation to explore the world with google.com/Street View. With a cop in pursuit, Ferguson refused to stop the Google car. After passing from one county to another, Ferguson lost control of the vehicle, drove through a guardrail, and went airborne before landing in a creek where he was handcuffed and taken into custody. Dude, you are so lucky to be alive. Did you think you were on the Dukes of Hazzard? The soggy Street View ride is seen in the above police evidence photo. During the chase, police noted motorists traveling in the opposite directions had to swerve to avoid colliding head-on with the speeding Street View car. Ferguson stated that he worked for Google and had no reason to run other than being scared. He was arrested on felony charge of resisting police with a vehicle and booked into the Henry County Jail, where he spent about 2 weeks before posting $10,000 bond. It's unclear how Ferguson, working as a Google contractor, came to operate a Street View car. An Indianapolis resident, Ferguson had a rap sheet, which included 2 separate convictions for driving with a suspended license and a 3rd conviction for driving with expired plates. He recently worked in the facilities department of Indiana University. Obviously, he was trying to break this out there. At the time of Ferguson's callers, residents of the towns he had been mapping, posted accounts to Facebook of the Street View car recklessly speeding through their neighborhoods. This guy had to be going 120 because he about killed me, passing me. All right, not sure how he's still alive. Dude, why did you try to? Can somebody tell me? Does this look like a vehicle that's going to outrun the cops? You can't make this stuff up. If the police put their sirens, okay. Nobody's talking about this, right? But why would you drive fast in this vehicle? Why would you speed? Anybody got any ideas? I do. Can you think? Why would this be the case? My guess, this is just me. My guess is this guy was driving that fast because he was being paid by the mile. He was being paid of mapping by the mile. So you're driving through this area. The more miles you get, the more you get paid. The more miles you put on the road to map these areas, the more money you make. He was a contractor. Meth. This guy, I'll bet, was was trying to get as much money as possible and driving 120 miles an hour with this camera. Right? He could rack up a hell of a lot more miles. Think of how many miles if you're going 120 miles an hour. Fruit by the foot. How many people saw this story? This one took me a bit aback. I was wrong. I was wrong. Tulsi Gabbard's unprecedented shift on the Second Amendment. Tulsi Gabbard, a former U.S. representative from Hawaii and veteran of the U.S. Military Reserve, Army Reserve, all right, recently discussed her views on the Second Amendment in a candid conversation on the Triggered podcast with Donald Trump Jr. Gabbard, known for her progressive stances, right, shared how her upbringing in Hawaii, with its strict gun laws, initially influenced her perspective on firearms. Right? Unlike many around her, she didn't have a background in a gun culture and had limited exposure to guns while growing up. Even during her military service, she encountered strict regulations on firearms, emphasizing the significance of safety measures and responsibility. Nevertheless, Tulsi Gabbard's viewpoint has started to transform as she engaged with constituents and individuals from different regions of the country, especially during her presidential bid and subsequent years. Connecting with people from states with different gun cultures like New Hampshire and Iowa offered Gabbard valuable insights into the varied experiences and worries of American gun owners. While serving in Congress, Gabbard initially backed what were termed as common sense gun laws. Yet through conversation with constituents and deeper reflection, she began to question the underlying motives of such legislation. Gabbard recognized that some supported gun control measures not solely for the public safety, but with the aim of undermining the Second Amendment. Really? Gabbard emphasized the crucial role of the Second Amendment in serving as a safeguard against the government's overreach and tyranny. She highlighted the Founding Fathers' belief that citizens should have the ability to protect themselves from an potentially oppressive government. Given recent developments and government actions, Gabbard stressed the significance of upholding this constitutional freedom. With all due respect, this woman is looking for a job. There are a lot of people right now making a lot of smoke about we need to make her the vice presidential. Put her on the vice presidential ticket. Make her the vice president. Yeah. People will flock to her. Everyone likes Tulsi. I don't like Tulsi. She's a freaking fraud, in my opinion. I'm going to be real blunt with you. She served in the military. Yet she didn't encounter the gun culture there. She didn't encounter the Constitution there, something she swore to uphold. She didn't even read it. She didn't even take the time while she was a quote-unquote officer in the United States serving in Afghanistan, all right, which we've all been told about, to understand what the concerns were. Well, I didn't grow up in the gun culture. I grew up in Hawaii. We don't have a gun culture in Hawaii. I kind of think I might like her if I knew in real life. I'm not sure. Look, I don't trust her. I don't trust people like this. Okay? I don't trust people who, at her age, should have known better. She can't tell me. You're not going to tell me that her serving in the military, people did not discuss this with her while she was serving in the military, and that the varied amount of people that she had been talking to didn't change her viewpoints. Then it only became when the general population was talking to her. All right, in New Hampshire and so forth. No, I'm not buying that. She's someone who wants to impose her view on other people. That's her tendencies. You don't want people like that. You don't. Politico. Why hasn't Biden called Chris Christie? Calling the fat man. Call the fat man. It's like calling me. Call the fat man in. Chris Christie extended flirtation with no labels should be a wake-up call for President Joe Biden. Christie seriously considered whether to run for president as an independent, according to people who spoke to him. He was being actively courted by No Labels. The group shared extensive polling and modeling data with the former New Jersey governor to make their pitch and even presented Christie with a list of potential Democrat running mates to fill out a unity ticket. For his part, the former New Jersey governor commissioned polling of his own and drafted a potential budget. All right, as first reported by the Washington Post. That Christie decided not to run is a result of No Label's well-documented shortcomings and structural challenges for any independent presidential candidate. The legacy-defining consequences of being the person who enabled Donald Trump to reclaim the White House. How did he? He's not. Christie considered a third-party bid. That Christie considered a third-party bid at all is part of an indictment of Biden. It's been well over 2 months since Christie dropped out of the Republican presidential primary. How has Biden not called Christie, whom he's known since the former governor was a student, was in student government at the University of Delaware undergraduate, right, to ask for his support? Or if he thought it's too soon or too direct, he could have at least asked Christie to get together. But that ask has not been made. Is he related to Agatha Christie? What would Chris Christie? The only thing that Biden could offer Chris Christie, all right, is a cabinet position. Okay, and Chris Christie would take it. There's no doubt in my mind, Chris Christie, being the fucking kind of clownish buffoon that he is, would be willing to accept a cabinet position within the Biden administration. He would then find out that he's not in that that he's only there to sit up there and support the left wing agenda, which Christie has no problem with. I want people to understand this. Chris Christie is not a conservative, and here's a Republican. He's been a Republican. He's not a conservative, and there's nobody in his cabinet, Biden's cabinet, right, that would tolerate a Chris Christie position. Why? They hate his guts. The left wing loons that run Biden and Biden himself, okay, hate Christie's guts for one reason. Okay, people don't know this, or they've forgotten about it. Chris Christie did one positive thing for the state of New Jersey when he was governor, and that is he went after and temporarily, didn't permanently, but temporarily broke the power of the teachers unions in the state. He broke them. It didn't last long, but he had some significant victories over them, and they'll never forgive him. Because that's how they keep themselves in power. Is by controlling what people know and what people learn. Their indoctrination center. And Chris Christie was a threat to that. They'll never forgive him for that. Now, as these academics get further and further left and become out of control more and more and more, okay, there's certain leftists who are starting to go, I don't really know about this. You're hearing it all over the place. I don't talk about Cenk and Anna Kasparian all that much, or the other one, right? All that much. Why? Because to be honest, there's nothing they can say that's going to be very meaningful, right? These people are frauds. You mentioned Chris Christie to these guys, right? And behind the scenes, not in public, but behind the scenes, they actually hate his guts. Oh, they'd be nice to him because while he's attacking Trump, and they'll let him come on and so forth, so that he could attack Trump, and they'll put his face front and center to attack Trump. But as soon as he leaves, they're all freaking cutting him down because of what he did to the teachers union. This is who these people really are, though. Sticky-fingered journalists on Air Force One put on notice from the AFP. Normally, they're the ones grilling Washington power players, but the tables have been turned on the White House press corps. You mean the propaganda corps? A news report made waves Friday in the U.S. Capitol with its humorous but detailed investigation into rampant theft from the press section of Air Force One, the president's official plane. For years, scores of journalists and others have quietly stuffed everything from engraved whiskey tumblers to wine glasses to pretty much anything with a U.S. Air Force One insignia on it into their bag before stepping off the plane, Politico reported. Last month, the White House Correspondents Association sent an email to its members issuing a stern notice that missing items from the press cabin, kept by reporters as memorabilia, have not gone unnoticed. When the U.S. president travels, he's accompanied by 13 journalists in the back of his Boeing. It's his Boeing, huh? No. Of the Boeing. This is why these people need to be thrown out. Media outlets pay for journalists to fly on government planes along with meals and drinks served in flight. The crew distributes as souvenirs small packages of M&M chocolates bearing the presidential seal and the U.S. leader's signature. Glasses and other Air Force One branded accessories are also available for purchase online. But that is not good enough for many of those aboard the plane. Politico's report noted, describing the sounds of plates and glassware clinking in journalists' backpacks as they disembark. In one instance, a former White House correspondent for a major newspaper hosted a dinner party serving food on a set of gold-rimmed Air Force One plates that had been pilfered over time, according to the report. But in a town of ambitious strivers, at least one journalist heeded the scolding from the Correspondents Association, culminating in the discreet return of an embroidered pillowcase after a meeting was arranged between the reporter and a press official in a park across from the White House. The pillowcase exchanged hands, and that was that. Really? How about you tell us who this reporter was? How about you tell us who the reporter is that set up there and gave a dinner party with the Air Force One plane? Don't you think that it's important for people to know just who these people are? Isn't that a concern? Am I just missing something? Men are becoming less fertile. And we may finally know why. You've heard that gut microbiome and probably skin microbiome, but did you know there's also a semen microbiome and that it could affect fertility? That is the finding of a recent study by the Department of Urology in the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA. The microbiome, all right, refers to a collection of microbes, bacteria, fungi, and viruses that affect human health. While there have been many studies into microbiomes found in the digestive system and on the skin, there has been less focus on the reproductive system, particularly in men. However, the UCLA team found that one microbiome, or microbe in particular, the bacteria, whatever it is, I'm not going to try to pronounce it, all right, had a direct negative impact on sperm mobility, which in turn affects fertility. The microbe is widely known as the cause of bacterial vaginosis in women, and it's most commonly found bacteria found in the female genital microbiome. So the conclusion of the study is women are more sluts now, so men are less fertile. Slutty women makes men less fertile. Put that out there. Why can't we have kids? Because I slept with too many sluts, honey. I slept. Or you slept with too many men. That's what the study is essentially saying. The spread of this disease, right? James, I think some brain cells just died. Did I make up the story? No. Granted, it was the Metro. Did I take an interpretation that wasn't actually presented? Yes, I did. But I'm just putting it out there. But somehow it's all the men's fault. I'm sure you just wait. Anyway, let's get on to the next story. UK counterterrorism police investigate attack on an Iranian journalist outside his London home. British counterterrorism police are investigating the stabbing of an Iranian television presenter outside his home in London as concern grows over the threats to the Farsi language satellite news channel, long critical of Iran's theocratic government. Poria Zariati, Zerati, I can't pronounce it. All right, a presenter at the London-based Iran International was stabbed in the leg Friday afternoon and is in stable condition at a hospital, the station said. His condition is not believed to be life-threatening. London's Metropolitan Police Service said that Poria's occupation, together with recent threats to the UK-based Iranian journalist, triggered the counterterrorism probe, even though the motivation for the attack is still unclear. While we continue to assess the circumstances of this incident, detectives are following a number of lines of inquiry, and our priority at this time is to try and identify whoever was behind this attack and arrest them. It sounds like an Italian supercar. Yeah, good. I'm gonna be real blunt. Good. If they actually catch the guys. We all know what the Iranian government is capable of. Okay? How are you planning to stop these kind of attacks in the West? with the Iranians being who they are. That's just curious. Just curious what the solution is. What your solution is. I've given you mine. If we taken out the Houthi threat today, all right, we tell Iran no more. Iran would sit up there and stop what they're doing. Just putting it out there. Maserati. Texas border warning issued that migrants have become more aggressive. Really? Border Patrol agents operating on the Texas-Mexico border have been warned migrants are becoming more aggressive towards law enforcement, according to a memo from the Texas Department of Public Safety acquired by news station. The warning comes after a video showing migrants pushing their way through razor wire and past several National Guard soldiers in El Paso, Texas, when it went viral on social media after being recorded by the New York Post on March 21st. Illegal migration across the southern border has become a major political issue, with Donald Trump, the presumptive Republican 2024 presidential candidate, making it a key focus of his campaign as he vies for a second White House term, according to the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. 68,260 irregular migrants, all right, were encountered by law enforcement on the Texaco-Mexico border in January, following 149,806 encounters in December. That's one small area of the border, all right, and between these 2 months, you had over 200,000 people coming across the border. Illegal immigration. Illegal immigrants. 200,000 in a 2-month span. That's one. If that average continued for the rest of the year, it won't, because during the summer that goes down. Okay, during the summer months that goes down for obvious reasons. But if it's that high with just one border in one state, now granted it's a large border, okay, but Arizona's border is very long. New Mexico's border is very long. California's border is extensive, not as long. But if there's 200,000 just in the Mexico border, if you average it out for the rest of the year, that's 1.2 million just in the Texas sector alone. And the city of Chicago is bitching about 10,000 illegal immigrants being pushed into their neighborhoods. That's just 2 months worth. This has been going on for years, folks. It's been going on for decades. How many illegals are in this country? There's a lot. Kobayashi Pharma factory inspected amid red yeast rice pill scare. Osaka, Japan. The health ministry and local authorities on Saturday inspected the Kobayashi Pharmaceutical Company's factory in Osaka, following reports of deaths and hospitalization possibly linked to its red yeast rice dietary supplements. The factory in western Japan, which was making the ingredients for the supplements, shut down in December, but the ministry and local government decided to carry out an on-site inspection in light of a widening health problems regarding the Osaka-based company's products containing Benji Koji, red yeast rice. In the search of the Osaka factory took about 4.5 hours. Kenji Yamashita, the head of the company's production division, on Saturday apologized but declined to provide the details of the inspection. Since the company moved its production of the ingredients to a factory in Wakayama Prefecture. An inspection will also be conducted there on Sunday. Kobayashi Pharmaceutical has so far reported a total of 5 deaths and the hospitalizations of more than 110 people as possibly linked to the red yeast rice dietary supplements. About 680 have either seen a doctor due to health issues or wish to do so. At a press conference on Friday, the drug maker said the puberelic acid, a natural compound made from blue mold, was detected in the supplement's ingredients and could have a connection to the health issues. The substance is a potent antibacterial, anti-malarial agent that can be toxic, according to the Health, Labor, and Welfare Ministry. Of the 3 types of product that have been voluntarily recalled by Kobayashi Pharmaceuticals, health complaints have largely come from those consumed by Benji Koji Cholesterol, all right, manufactured after September, according to the company. The pills have been touted as products that help the lower levels of LDL cholesterol, known as bad cholesterol. If it was an India or Chinese facility, I'd kind of expect it. Okay. Um, Anybody who expects these things to be perfect, okay, when you're talking about supplements and things like that, there's going to be, from time to time, problems. That's just the reality. Okay, it shouldn't surprise anybody that there was a problem here. Okay, now why do these things take place? What's been happening with this? How do you move forward with this? Well, those are all good questions, and there's not really good answers to it, quite frankly. It is what it is. These things are going to happen from time to time. I said this many times. In the not soon enough category, Harvard applications drops 5% after a year of turmoil in the Ivy League campus. Harvard said it received 5% fewer undergraduate applications this year compared to with a year earlier, a dip that follows a tumultuous year for the Ivy League school that included the resignation of the president Claudine Gay, who is still on the payroll, all right, and a backlash over anti-Semitic incidents on the campus. The Cambridge, Massachusetts-based school received 54,008 applications for the class of 2028, according to the Harvard, the campus newspaper. The undergraduate college at Harvard University accepted 1,245 of those applicants, giving the incoming freshman class acceptance rate of 3.59%, the highest admission rate in 4 years, the publication noted. The decline at Harvard stands in contrast to rising student applications at other Ivy League establishments, with Yale's admission pool jumping 10%, Columbia's university reporting an increase of 5.4%. Because of their larger application pool, Yale said its 3.7% acceptance rate was its lowest ever, while Columbia's admission rate narrowed to 3.8% from 3.9% a year ago. Don't send your kids to college, to any of these universities. Don't send them to Harvard. I've talked with Harvard graduates. I've met them. And I'm going to be real blunt, folks. They are not the biggest and brightest. They are the most indoctrinated. Well, I'll give you that. I'll give you that they're indoctrinated, all right. But they're not good. They're not brighter than other people. They're not better than other people in any way, shape, or form. They're not. There needs to be people literally going on television saying every single day, don't send your kids to these Ivy League schools. Don't send these kids here. All they're going to do is indoctrinate your kids. They're not going to give them what you're expecting to give them. I grant you that their reputation is still too high. But these people are a threat. They really are. They've become a threat to democracy. These are not the brightest. They're not the best. They aren't. They have a reputation that's completely outsized. And they've always had this public persona, how good they were. But the reality is they're not. Just putting it out there. Women gets 15 months in prison for naked rampage and public pleasure. A Florida woman began serving a prison sentence, for a recent naked rampage at a convenience store that included a masturbation session conducted in front of the police. Cecilia Barrett, 35, pled guilty earlier this month to a variety of criminal charges stemming from her unclothed antics at a racetrack convenience store in late January. She was sentenced to 15 months in state prison after copying to aggravated assault, a felony, and 4 misdemeanors, including exposure of sexual organs and disorderly intoxication. Following her sentencing, Barrett was transferred on March 20th to the Pinellas County Jail to the custody of the Florida Department of Corrections. AI alleged by police, alleged by police, a drunken Barrett threatened workers at the racetrack in St. Petersburg with a sharp-edged vegetable peeler and destroyed merchandise. Also, the defendant, prior to had been taken into custody, began masturbating in front of the deputies. Oh my God. In addition to a prison term, who has previously served time for battery, marijuana possession, in order to pay fines and court fees totaling $1,100. Barrett is pictured above in the Department of Corrections intake photo. Yeah, okay. Alrighty. 2 more stories left. I moved to an Arizona oasis that banned cars. It's as dreamy as I expected, but it can be a struggle to venture outside it. John Robert Rodriguez moved to Cul-de-sac, a car-free community in Arizona on October of 2023. He never liked driving and believes that fewer cars can foster more community. I heard about Cul-de-sac when it was still in development. I went on a tour in August of 2023, and it looked just like the mock-ups. It looked just like how the community said it was going to look all those years ago. I don't drive. I have a license, but I don't drive. I moved in October. When you start removing the dependency on cars, you start seeing more people. When you go to a city, the more cars that you see on the road, the fewer people you'll see on the sidewalks. People need to be out and about in order to build the community. I'll be just going home from work on the light rail and run into my literal next door neighbor. I guess we're on the same schedule on the light rail. We talk on the way, and when walking back together, I really enjoyed that kind of casual friendship. I feel like that was missing before. It's like you either have those very close connections or they're strangers to you. I like that. I moved to Cul-de-sac and also for Cul-de-sac. All right, that was one of the main reasons I decided to move. I registered with my email at some point years ago. They sent me an email in 2023 saying, "Hey, by the way, our phase 1 is opening up, and we're looking for residents. We saw that you were interested." I didn't realize it was going so fast. The thing that I was interested in all those years now exists. I was raised in Florida, but my parents moved to Texas when I was in college. And the past 5 or 6 years of my family's been in Texas. I lived in the suburbs in both Florida and in Texas. It's been my whole experience. And not just the suburbs of a major city, but a suburb of a suburb. It was so far removed from the city, from community, and from anything that makes life livable. I heard the cul-de-sac about cul-de-sac, and I was like, that sounds like somewhere I want to be. All right. And then this guy comes down here and he goes a little bit further down. My rent is $1,400 and utilities are maybe another $150 a month. But I've also been running the heater like a madman because I'm freezing all the time. I didn't know Arizona got cold. So my last electric bill was a bit more than I anticipated. Really? Dude, you moved in October. Wait till July hits. You think your electric bill for heat was high because it was colder than you anticipated? Wait till you see the electric bill for keeping the AC on. Just pointing it out. This guy is an idiot. This guy thinks, oh, look, I got light rail. I can do this. I can go to work. Yeah, you live and work where you think you can walk. Wait till it's August and you're walking around. Wait till it's August and you're going back and forth taking these rail systems. Then come back and write this story about how wonderful it is. There's a reason in Arizona you don't see people walking around in the streets. And it's not because, oh, they prefer cars. It's because it's too freaking hot to be outside. This guy's in for a hell of a surprise in a few months. Now we've had a cool winter, and it's been wet, and it's supposed to actually pour rain tomorrow for the next couple days, and we're supposed to get quite a bit of rain for us. They're anticipating over an inch of rain, which is quite a bit of rain for one time for us. Meanwhile, people keep talking about, oh, it's a drought. It's been 1,000 year drought. It's a drought. It's more than a drought, folks. Final story of the day. Police confuse security camera cat photo for a mountain lion. Dude, if you had a cop who sits up there and sees these 6-inch slats and thinks that this is a mountain lion, come on, man. You think this is a mountain lion? What kind of cops do you have? Police in California shared a resident security camera photo that was initially said that was to be a mountain lion, but later clarified that the animal was merely a big cat. Really? The South San Francisco Police Department said in a Facebook post that the photo was captured by the resident's Ring camera depicting a mountain lion walking along a fence. Officers conducted an area check but were unable to locate the furry guy, for there were no additional sightings. We'd like to remind our residents to avoid mountain lions, even at a distance. A brief glimpse should be cause for alarm. Police later edited the post, revealing that the animal in the picture was actually just a particularly large domestic cat. We were able to confirm that the big cat was not a mountain lion, police wrote. Out of an abundance of caution, we wanted to share some tips. Oh, those slats are between 4 and 6 inches each, and then there's like 3 of those slats together, or 4 of those slats together. All right, if it's 4 inches each, all right, That cat in length is about 16 inches. If it's 6 inches, then that cat in length is about 24 inches or 2 feet, right? A 2 foot wide or long cat. That is not a mountain lion. It's not even close to being a mountain lion. It didn't even look like a mountain lion. Anybody who saw the damn photo had to sit there know that it wasn't a friggin' mountain lion. And if you had the Ring camera, you probably could see the whole thing moving in and out as it walked along the entire thing. You could tell. I'll see myself out. I just don't know what's wrong with these police officers. Okay, everybody, that's all I got for the day. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate you all coming out and listening to me rant and rave and make fun of things. Hope that you all have a good day, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye bye.